We getting ready to blow. We getting ready to blow. We getting ready to, so ready to, oh so ready to.
I'ma go get what
We
you
getting
tryna
ready
do.
to.
I'ma go get what you
We getting
tryna
ready
do.
to.
I'ma go get what you
We
tryna
getting ready
do.
to, so
I'ma go
ready
get
to,
what
oh
you
so
tryna
ready
do
to.
with it.
We ready for jump ball, center court now, standing tall now, hold the fort down. This is showtime, more than sports now, running crunch time, we rush like fourth down.
I be taking wins, we don't mess with loss. I be taking wins, we don't mess with loss. I be taking wins, we don't mess with loss. I be taking wins, we don't mess with loss. We been on that paper chasing all that fashion. We been on that paper chasing what you ration.
Been in the grind now, we ready for prime time, ready for shine now, be ready to get smile. On the rise, all eyes up on us now, blast off spaceships till the touchdown.
Energy level on high, put that trouble on fire. Double it down, I'ma spit it around. Click, clack, boom, we the best in town. Energy level on high, put that trouble on fire. Double it down, I'ma spit it around. Click, clack, boom, we the best in town. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, though. I started off the lowest point in life, yo.
We getting ready to, so ready to, oh so ready to.
We getting ready to blow, folks. What it is. You're chilling out, hanging with the ProQuo Show, Yeah, baby. We weren't here last week. I was out in, where was I? Austin, Texas. So couldn't get it done, you know what I mean? And I needed to be more present, right? So I was present last week. Yo, been letting the hair grow, you know what I mean? Trying to get it up there, trying to get the part going. You know, oh, I got the wrong side. The part. So trying to get the part going, or as I say, trying to get my Gordon Hayward part going. You know what I mean? Gordon Hayward's like the savior of parted hair. So yeah, baby. So we getting there. I sound a little Barry White, a little extra sexy. Not to say that I don't usually sound sexy, but really have the little extra Barry White thing going, and I'm happy about it. People like, yo, you sick? I was like, I don't know, but when I was on that trip, my voice took a dip down. I was like, is it allergies out there? It wasn't COVID. Did the test, and I was like, yo, maybe I'm aging. Maybe I'm getting that deep Barry White voice. You know what I mean? But no, I think it is maybe a touch of laryngitis or something like that. I don't know. I don't have a temperature. I don't feel sick. I've been still exercising, so I'm fine. But I was doing a lot of rapping, and when I was out there, shout out to my man Greg Menekis out there recording the joint order out there. He's been a guest on the show. He runs the live stream for the Celtics, which if you guys have not checked out, you should really go on Greg Ory's page on Facebook. Check out my man Greg Ory. They do a thing where they live stream the game. I've talked about it once before. It's much like what we're doing right now, except there's no video. It's just all the icons that you would be doing in the chat is what you see, unless they bring someone quote unquote on stage. So if you've been on Clubhouse before, the idea of being on stage is kind of like what you see on there. So you're watching the game on this main screen, and then everyone's chatting on the right hand side. So instead of watching us, you'd be watching the game. It's like if I share the screen right now and I was sharing the Celtics, that's it. And you just hear us doing our commentary. So it's an actually really cool way to watch the game. They can pull you up on stage and stuff like that, and had me featured up on there once, and it was real cool. And, I check in regularly. What up, Tree? Good to see you. LD's, I think, coming by soon. So we'll see if LD finds the link. He hit me up earlier. So we got a lot in the works, a lot of music in the works. Yo, That's Pro is currently number 9 on the charts, which is real cool right now. You might say, what charts? Mostly college and mixed show format and live stream shows contribute to the charts that are out there that most artists in my lane are usually trying to be on. It'd always be nice to be on Billboard or whatever, but that's a whole nother level. Really, it's another level of that. And, luck of the draw, whatever in some cases, but most cases you got to pay to play to be in that world. And so that's that. But, every once in a while, someone creeps on the under and bubbles to the over. So I'm rocking the Boston sweatshirt, and I'm probably not going to be rocking it long because I forgot, heat rises and I'm up on the top floor and it is getting real hot in here. So I got the Patriots on below. So I'm going to have to mute that camera a little bit. I don't want to get too sexy and change and have anything, not happen that's supposed to happen. You know what I mean? So thanks, Tree. Appreciate the congrats on the Yo, That's Pro. And shout out to my man, DJ Edition, who's been really plugging away out there, helping me with find like interviews and tracking all the airplay at all the scores and scores of stations who are playing across the country. So he's been a beast. If you're an artist and you haven't retained the services of somebody like a DJ Edition to do the music marketing for you, you really should. A lot of artists are out there under the impression that you need, because they hear it. You hear it all the time. It's like, I need a manager. And really, I've taught the class multiple times at the college level too, in terms of like who's on your team. And a lot of times you'll hear a personal manager. Sometimes you'll hear a business manager, and then you'll often hear an agent, and then you'll hear a lawyer making up usually the team. Yeah, Tree. And let me blast some of these, put some of these out there so people know what we're talking about. So Tree said, good evening. And then she followed it up, looking good, pro, much appreciated. Trying to get my smooth on. Yeah, sexy to know it. I tell you, I've been at least saying it, put it out there in the air. And congratulations, appreciate that. I'll get to some of the other comments too, but just wanted to acknowledge Tree rocking with us since day one, our day one. But yeah, and a lot of people are under the impression that your team, those 4 integral pieces to your team. I will say, and then of course, if you're on a label, right? So you're on a label, you have like a label head, or in many cases, there's an A&R whom a lot of the artists report to in the classical sense of what used to happen. You get signed and you'd be assigned an A&R rep, right? So that person would sometimes come out to the show, sometimes it'd be an intern or 2 or whatever, and you'd usually deal with your A&R. And once in a while you deal with the label reps or whatever, when you're getting signed or when there's an issue or something like that. And then otherwise your team, they get paid before you do, which is interesting. So that's a not nice piece of that. In most cases, they're paid before you are. So, you have your gross numbers coming in from whatever you do, whether the shows or sales or whatever. And if you're paying your team based on those numbers, a lot of times your net is affected after they're paid out. So, those percentages can vary sometimes from 5 to 20%, depending on what they do. A business manager might take in 5, and a personal manager might be 10 to 15, depending on who it is they do, what your clout is. There's a lot of variables. There's nothing that's hardcore in a line in the sand, so to speak. But that agent is another piece of it where people want to, they want to get booked. And so a lot of people ask the question, what's the difference between an agent and a personal manager? And, a personal manager is not really booking your shows. They can assist in that. They sometimes can drum up that business, but an agent really is principally the person who's doing that. And the manager is the one who's making all the deals for you and, doing some of that mid-level negotiation and making sure things are in its place, right? They're your right-hand man or woman, and they can do a lot of things. They travel the shows in many cases. They are intersecting between, making sure the merch is straight, making sure when you're at a studio session, sometimes they're there as well. Sometimes that's the A&R, but there's a lot of these things, right, that you generally are usually not on the level they need, just to be perfectly honest. Like, we talk about these things in classes and we say them, but a lot of times we don't make the disclaimer to people correctly and say, look, you don't necessarily need these things yet. And people will be like, well, when will I know? You'll know when you know. Like, when you're getting so busy that you can't manage your stuff correctly, well, you probably are going to need some sort of manager. Probably not a business manager. A business manager. And what up, Andre? Andre probably heard me speak about some of this at some point, right? If you need some beats, holler at Andre Victorian. Shout out to him right there. There's his page if you're looking. So look for Andre Victorian, spell it like that. Make some beats, and yo, we gotta work something out, Andre. We gotta do something, man. I know. But just to get back to that point, is a lot of people will think they need that team because that's what they hear in the textbook. They're like, yo, I know I need to get a manager, and most cases you don't. Right? Most cases you don't need any of that team. You have a right-hand man or woman or somebody just rocking with you to some of your local shows. That's usually good enough to start out. And that person may morph into your manager, but in many cases, you're usually not even ready for a manager who's actually going to be making a cut of you, because it's like, what's the percentage? Percentage of what? You know, like if you're not really making any income and you're still paying to do shows, you're probably not in a position where you actually need a manager. You might bring one to the show, roll out, call somebody a manager or whatever. I used to call it, and I still do, call it the hold the bag guy. You need someone to hold the bag, literally to be increasing the bag that you can be holding. A person would hold your physical bag that would have like an assistant tree, like someone who's holding your records, making you look cool, right? So a lot of the stuff that's behind me is self-made, right? So you see this thing up here on top. That's really nothing more than an 8x10, just made to look nice. It was done on like Word. I probably have done some of them on fancier programs, right? But like that thing behind me is just done on Word. Now it's just a glossy. You can make those these days at like a Kinko's or whatever. But you got to think about having those with all of your information on them and signing those at a show is different than what you'd see from the average artist. And the fact that you've spent to do that is probably a signal to some of the people that you are actually on that level. So a lot of this kind of stuff is smoke and mirrors. It's about how it appears and how people look. Like if I'm on a college show and I whip out those and I start signing them, what are people at the college going to think? Wow, the person must be big. He's got pictures to sign, right? And in many cases, yeah, but probably because you know enough to do that. Not necessarily because like those are being made by some big label somewhere or whatever, right? In the old days, they were. So I would do shows, and Fee and I would see people with the glossies, and first thing we said is like, "Yo, we got to make glossies. That's what you're supposed to have," and we didn't want to be on a label for most of our duration of when we were doing our stuff. We were trying to figure out how not to be on a label, but how to make it look like that we were doing all the same kind of business, because we knew enough that artists that were on the labels were mostly broke. And so it was like, you wanted to be wanted. You wanted someone to want you to be on the label, but most of the time those artists were never making any money. And that's still the case in most cases. And, the whole thing has morphed into making it look like you have streams, making it look like your social media is that big or whatever. And, if you see an organic, like couple thousand people on a Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and you're hearing that name consistently, that's probably realistic. It could be 5,000, it could be 10,000, it could be 30. But you got to ask yourself, how would those people be added? Is that artist just adding anybody to look cool? Or are you trying to keep some kind of a network so that you can respond to those people and actually reach out to them? And you got to figure out what works best for you, right? Are you going to do a situation where you're going to want to be in touch with your actual fans, or do you just want to have mass emails going out and basically harvesting those email addresses, getting people onto your website, or just getting them onto your social media? If you don't have a website, are you just putting out content every day just because you hear that's the thing to do? And kind of without engagement, you're not going to be booked anywhere anyways. Like, let's say I come and do a show at your college, right? If I don't do well and I don't make those people feel wanted and respected or whatever, do you think they're inviting me back, right? And the answer is probably no. Now, if there's 100 people at a, let's say, a college show, a very pretty small college show, right? You might come back from that college show and you've added maybe, I don't know, 10 people might have actually taken the time to look at your page, and not just look at your page, but actually add you, right? That's actually not bad. Like if you're getting 10% of the people at every event that you do to actually add you, that's not bad. Now, I'm not rocking 1,000-person shows consistently. When I do, I'm excited about it, and I'm terrible at actually shouting out my own social media. I'm terrible at it, right? But what you want to do is have people shout out your Shazam. You want people to Shazam your song. Like Yo That's Pro right now has like 50 Shazams, right? I never tell people to do that. Like most of my songs have like 5 because I slack. Those are the kind of things that'd be helpful to have your personal manager shouting out for you, right? That hold the bag person. But I'm at the level where I get the money to do a show, and I'm competing against people who have the money to bring that extra person. They're usually above me, but I'm usually going by myself a lot of time to try to at least get the gig, right? And not make it too expensive. So there's a give and take, so this day and age, I get mad at myself if I forget like to do these kind of things. Like I'm going to a conference in another week, right? If I'm at that conference and I'm rocking and performing and doing whatever, and I don't shout my stuff out, I'm like, what was I doing? But I'm just happy to be getting the check, getting to go to the hotel, do the show, sell some stuff. Might add 5 to 20 people on my social media. But at the end of the day, it's like social media is a little bit of smoke and mirror too, because it's like, what are they actually doing for you? Unless you're somebody who's actually feeding that beast every day and putting content on there and you're really like giving them snippets and doing all that stuff. Then it gets to some point where it's like, am I doing too much that it's taking me away from my art, or whatever it is tangible that you got to do? And so those are the decisions we got to make. And I am very excited that I see somebody backstage who I'm going to bring up in a second. And that person knows a little bit about what we're going to have to talk about, because that person knows what's going down right now in New England. And that person, Fly. What up, Fly?
Yo, what's good?
What's good with you, man? What's good with the Mississippi, and I'm trying to think of the pro sports team there, the Mississippi Nothing. What's
Absolutely
going on
nothing,
what's
bro.
the deal with
Absolutely
that?
nothing,
What's
bro.
the deal with places like we got Jackson, Mississippi out there with no pro sports team? What's going on with that?
Bro, Jackson,
Fee's in the house. What up, Fee?
Jackson, Mississippi couldn't support a pro team, man. Like,
sad,
but it's true.
Jackson itself might not, but what about the whole state? I mean, there's nowhere that we can put a team in Mississippi. It just can't do it.
there's as far as like, geographically, but fiscally, financially, nah.
Right.
I don't really see. I don't really see. I mean, mind you, there's some states, without, state tax revenues and stuff like that.
Fee wrote, "I'm sorry, Miss Jackson." That's very funny. Very funny. Sorry, all Jackson. We don't got a pro sports team out there.
No.
But we do got one in Boston, which we're gonna get to. We got a couple teams in Boston you might have heard of. I got the Boston shirt on, coincidentally.
I see you representing. Man, but you know what? I almost wore a Boston green tonight, but I actually didn't pick Boston to be in the final, so I can't even front.
Hold up. I said I wasn't going to do it. Now, I know it's not. It's what I just happened to have on, so it's
it's a New England palooza going on.
It's a theme.
Over there.
It's a lot. It's a theme. We got the Patriots on here. Yeah, we got. I did bring this when I was out in Austin. I was out in Austin, Texas, and funny, Austin, Texas.
What's up, Tree?
What up, Tree? Austin, Texas doesn't have a team either, and I had to think about that. I'm in the Uber with the dude. I'm like, is there no pro team out here?
Nope. But their college crowd though is crazy.
Those Longhorns are for real, right? That UT out there, baby.
Yeah,
UT
bro,
is like a
it's
country.
Crazy. And we kind of have something like a similar. We have an HBCU here that's crazy like that. That's like fanatical. Let me say, it's not on the same scale, but the synergy and the fanaticism that kind of around that exists. That exists.
Absolutely.
with JSU, with Jackson State University, and the Sonic Boom of the South, and all that. So that's there. But just on a larger scale, as far as like when you think about like Alabama, Tuscaloosa, like it's just not on that scale, but it's here in that form. Yeah,
I mean, you think about it, really, you start thinking about it. I mean, obviously Boston is the exception for all of New England. New England, for those not playing along at home, New England is 6 states, right? And none of those states have pro Big Four sport teams, except Boston, right? So Massachusetts is the one of only those 6 states. So that's not all that uncommon. When you think about it, it's the coastal states for the most part that have the pro teams. The stuff in the heartland, really, there's not a lot of pro teams going on anywhere in those areas as well. And then some of the rim of the South doesn't have, pro teams too.
And I think it may be kind of built around the structure of the way our country's built. Most of your harbor cities are thriving, lucrative cities from times past, just because of trades and commerce and stuff like that. So those cities seem to be more populated and seem to have a greater commerce or GDP and stuff like that. And then your internal states, which your agricultural states, really, where people don't really. It's not as many people because a lot of land masses for growing crops and grains, or just different stuff like that. Like Mississippi, for example, has what's called the Mississippi Delta, and it's known for like its grain and cotton and stuff like that. So there's fewer people.
Yep.
And usually in farmland areas, those farmlands are owned by companies, so to speak, where they're employing thousands of people. Usually, a farmer and his family or whatever, and they're just feeding the masses from just a few hands and stuff like that. So it's not like there's crazy jobs available from stuff like that. When you got, like you said, industrial areas like Massachusetts, a lot of manufacturing going on.
For real.
In areas like jobs for people.
And you know, it's funny because when you're a kid, it's amazing how they whitewash that history, because it's funny, but it's like you think of the North, and a lot of us who are from the North, from the East, you know, we think of like, oh, you know, slavery is going on. That was them down the South. And it's like, what do you think was driving slavery? It was like, I'm from Lowell, Mass, right? It's a mill city. It's not like they weren't spinning cotton. It's what they were spinning, you know? So it was like, they don't actually say that to you. Like when you're a kid, they don't go, hey kids, and here's where all that cotton that was being picked by the slaves came up to. So it wasn't the South necessarily that was driving that. It's the South was harvesting the product that was being profitized in the East, you know? So it's like, it's not like the East was immune, you know? It's like people like to get that twisted, you know? And it's an interesting...
It's the truth, man. It's the truth. And then your North was populated for that same reason. A lot of those people, freed slaves, went north to manufacturing plants, Detroit, Motor City, and then places like Chicago to try to, you know, find places to work. And so it's just one big harvest. So that, and it takes L to kind of talk about Mississippi and how it has been really the heartland for a large part of our country, and how most stuff started here and kind of derived from here and just spread it out in different places and stuff like that.
Yeah, Fee wrote to my thing too, like didn't think about it like that. It's like they don't put it in your head to think about it like that. They try to not even bring that up, you know. And what are you to say as a kid? You know, it's not going to be the first thing you're thinking of. You know, I started thinking about that when I was a late teen. I was like, you know, what exactly were they making? They say textiles, you know, and it's like, I never heard that word textile before, you know. I was like, what's a textile? That's a fancy way to say we were spinning your cotton and turning it into clothes, you know what I'm saying? Or quilts or whatever it was, right? It was like, you know, and I remember the first time I heard in history, and they were like the spinning jenny, you know, they're talking about Eli Whitney, and you know, and I'm like, that's a slave invention, is what that is. That's exacerbating slavery, is what that's. They make it sound like the great liberator, like, oh, this is gonna make it so much easier. Right? Gonna make it easier for whom? You know what I'm saying? Like it's still gonna make profits go up. You know what I'm saying? But so yeah, it's just maybe eventually you switch products or whatever, but. Yeah, so when you think about that, it's like Lowell is a historical, it's a national park, the national park system for the mills and the canal system that they have that would, you know, we have canals that, you know, you think of where Lowell's situated from, for those not playing along at home. Lowell is northeast of Boston, northwest of Boston. So Boston is to the east and south by about 20 miles, right? And so it's like, drawing a line to get there and going through little cricketies that you have to take to get there. It's probably a little closer to like 25 by the time you go through all the meandering ways, right? But a straight line is like 20 miles. And they made it so that you could float stuff down the canals. Like you could, like granite floats, you know what I'm saying? Like you could take like granite and, you know, you could float it on down. You know, you can build your little raft systems and you build your little raft systems and float that stuff on down and, you know, send it right down the canal, you know? And, you know, you can float stuff down in a boat pretty easily down a canal, you know, or rafts or whatever you want to call it. And that was an ingenious invention. And then you had the mill owners, or I should say the managers, living up high in like the Belvedere section of Lowell. It's a much nicer section of Lowell where the commoners didn't live. You know, the people like running the mills would live there. They were like the overseers, you know, but the owners were living down in Boston. You know what I mean? They were like, they were running the show, you know? And it's funny because you have this whole freedom trail kind of thing. You always hear like, hey, we're going to get to the north and go be free. It's like, yeah, you can be free up in the north and people can feel good about themselves, pat themselves on the back, but you are exacerbating slavery by the industry that you're creating off the back of the South, you know? So, and off the back of slaves, of course.
That's the truth, man. That's the truth. There's something similar like that too down in New Orleans. New Orleans. That was
congrats, Dennis Everett Jr. I saw that position posted on LinkedIn, man. So shout out to
Dennis. What's up, man? Yeah, those canal stuff was dug by the Irish.
Yeah,
stuff
right.
Like that.
Only job the Irish could get. They were like, you go dig those ditches in the canal. You know, the Irish were the black population of the white people, right? There was like the white people's black people. The white people's slaves were essentially the Irish. You know,
that's the
like,
truth. So man, there's a lot of dark history, man, that exists, man, that's been omitted. And I guess
except those slaves weren't beaten and whipped and killed and murdered and thrown off boats. But you know,
I don't like the omission of truth, man, because I feel like if you just tell the whole story as is, and I feel like just from a cultural perspective as an African American, there's a lot of richness that really, it makes it seem like slavery was our history when slavery really was just a disruption to our history.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things there, accomplishments and things that were created ingeniously because, there were people, Africans who didn't have the luxury of being able to, find a job or do what they want to do and be where they wanted to be and live where they wanted to live. And so a lot of the things that we benefited from, or the northern region or the eastern region, some of those inventions came from some slaves saying, like, you know what, I got to sweep all day, and the brooms and mops and all this stuff that we use every day that we take for granted.
Come up with a smart way to make my life easier.
Make my life easier. And that's really, and that's still true now for technology, like just meet a need that someone has, and you basically got an invention. Most inventions were driven by stuff like that.
Right. And there was a balance of where you'd have, just like anything, if you think of anything, right? If you take out all of your misconceptions and stereotypes and everything of all the people you haven't met in your life, right? Of whatever stereotype you hold, like this group of people is like X, and this group is like that. Everyone has, right? Everyone has one until they're proven wrong. And sometimes the difference is some people, when they're proven wrong, they don't let go of it, right? They just like conspiracy theorists, right? Like they're like, they will find a new conspiracy to fill in for the old one because they are not changing their way of thinking, right? They are locked and loaded that this is how it is. And but what you will find, I think, what you would find in a lot of histories is you'll find there are always going to be people that if you bother to study those people, it would change your opinion of whatever it is, that group that you're thinking. Like you can find common folk who are genius in a particular area in any walk of life, right?
That's the truth.
So there's always going to be like that genius, like you said, who's observing working in the office and is like, working for, let's say it's a slave working in a house, right? Who's a quote unquote well-treated slave, right? Take what you will for that. And who's like in the house and has figured out some way to improve upon a broom or something, right? Like, that person don't necessarily need to know how to read and write and be academic to figure that out. That person that is looking is like, oh, I can see what needs to be done, right? And then there is the, there are plenty of slaves who were able to either secretly or had sympathetic masters who eventually did let them read and write, right? Who, depending on where they were. And it was like, then you had people who were quote unquote educated academically, right? Who could then go do incredible stuff, right? Some of them below the counter, some of them above the counter, so to speak. And it's like, you think about all of those contributions that just don't get recorded anyways, on top of all that struggle to have to overcome. And then it's like, well, let me just take the credit for that because I'm your slave owner and that needs to be me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what? And so you get, it just perpetuates sort of the whole supremacy kind of thing. It was that, well, where are the great examples of Black achievement, let alone what had to be overcome? Right.
That wasn't enough.
Right. But the funny part is that's true for every society that there is. It's like whoever wins the war gets to write the history, and it's like, I say it all the time as speaking of someone who's Greek. It's like, no, the Greeks, it wasn't that they were master mathematicians so much as it was that they had a pretty good naval. They had a pretty good army. They had a pretty good, they had a pretty good armed services, if you will, that won some wars, and they got to write history for at least a period of time and say, well, that's what we did, And sometimes the things get blown out of proportion. Like you'll read like Greek history and it'll be like, oh, they're master mathematicians. Like they didn't understand algebra. They did geometry. They did geometry with spatial reasoning, which, they did really well with it. But who knows who they were stealing from? Egypt's right there. Like Egypt and Greece.
The concept came from, things they
how many islands are in dispute over like historically that go from Greece? Like Greece to Egypt is mad close. It's like right there, it's like, we'll take that one. Yeah, we'll take that one. Yeah, we get that one. Yeah, we did that. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, we just grow up going, or whoever it is. It could be true for even ones that we think get stolen credit. Like it could be, it's the Egyptians. It could have been the Nigerians, it could have been the Ethiopians. It could have been and they lost the fight. You know what I'm saying? So it gets attributed
that's
to
the truth.
That's
it's
like
the truth, man.
So it's hard. It's hard to know, but all we can do is live, learn, study, and try to do better. But
it's funny you mentioned that because I was just reading about Egypt and people kind of there was a dialogue going on if the Egyptians were on the prowess, as if, the way is, well, the limited knowledge that we do have about what happened during that time. Why aren't there pyramids in other places? And there are in other places, even as to recently finding places like that in the Amazon rainforest.
Sure, I was gonna say, yeah, everyone knows, right? Mexico and South America filled with
Yep,
pyramids.
filled with pyramids and places like that. And brown people, these pyramids are found in places. And did you not know, man, there's a huge, that majority of the rainforest hadn't really been like geographically tested. So
Well,
there's still
I mean,
huge parts of it that we don't even really know what's there,
right.
and they're slowly discovering more and more
I mean,
stuff.
you
It's
think about
crazy.
the climate of a rainforest and why it would not be conducive to leaving a trail like it would in a desert, right? Like
Right,
a dry,
exactly.
arid place, you're going to have a lot of history. In a wet, mushy, hot, humid place, you're going to have it erode, right?
Yep.
And it's like things are going to erode that you'll never, it's an interesting
Things gonna
question.
grow over it after that
Yep.
much time.
There's a whole and I hate to this is the one maybe conspiratorial thinking thing that I do go down the path of, because when I say conspiratorial, I guess what I mean is we don't have evidence for it, but it's fun to ponder. Now, when you think about the Earth, which is in the billions, right? When you're using
Like
age,
4 billion.
right. Billions, just the
That's
fact of
crazy,
wrapping our
bro.
brain around the fact of multiple billions, right, is really hard. You think of like universe 13.9 billion, right? Think of Earth, let's just say 4 billion, right? And let's say humans in the way we consider ourselves humans 300,000 years ago, right? Like in terms of the modern human is about 300,000 years old, right? Most of our records stop at about 4,000 years ago for people, right?
Right.
Like any kind of recorded history, it's like 4,000 years ago we start to lose it all. Maybe five. Let's just say 5,000 to round up, right? Keep it. You think about from 5,000 to 300,000. That's a factor of 60. So imagine 60 times longer ago from when we call ourselves modern humans, we have nothing of. And so it's fun to ponder like what could have been achieved by humans, right?
With that
Even
much time.
right, like what were humans 100,000 years ago like? Assuming that there was some civilization, and that's what a lot of these shows point to, right? They try to do like these the hidden ancient aliens and UFOs and all that stuff. They make
Yeah.
you think, right? And it's like, could that possibly be the case that there could have been some intelligent civilization 100,000 years ago, more intelligent than we are now, and we're just catching up, right? And it's fun to try to think about that and compare the evidence and say, could this possibly be the case?
It's
And
overwhelming, man. It's a
yeah,
lot, bro. That's a lot to consider, man.
yeah,
That's a
it's
lot.
fun. It's fun to think about it, right?
That's
But
a
it's
lot. Yeah, because that's the like you said, just the factors, the
right,
compounding factors when you just think about the amount of time
right.
that Earth has been here.
Right. And
To
that's just
think
what we
like,
know
yeah,
of the
right,
lineage of humans,
exactly.
like there
Just
could
what
have
we
been
know.
like some, and people always say, they do this all the time incorrectly when they're talking about, they're like, well, if we came from apes, it's like, we didn't like quote unquote come from apes. Like, it's like, we're not like, we didn't like monkeys didn't stop. Chimpanzees didn't stop evolving and all of a sudden they turned into humans. That isn't what happened, right? There's many paths of, primates, right? And we have common ancestors, right? So that is what we're saying. We know it, but there could have been one that's extinct, right? They could have been millions of years old that did more than we ever did, right? Like that could have been, when you're reading the Bible, it could be talking about them brothers way back
Yeah,
in the
it
day, right?
really, and
Right?
that's the truth, bro.
Yeah,
And that's really the truth, man. Solar flares, and the
yeah.
Earth's gonna purge itself and take care of
Could
itself.
have been a
That's
billion years old,
that's why global warming doesn't scare me, bro. Because I just feel like even with
We
global
won't be here to
warming,
worry about it.
no, bro. Like that's the truth. Like the Earth's been here too long. It survived through too much and been here too long. And like just like the atmosphere has just been perfect for like mankind and for just life to exist. And thinking about all the other planets that the common person don't know, that we visited so many other planets in some way, shape, form, or fashion, as far as just being able to see what's there and to know that it's just rocks and there's no way to live there. You
A
know
lot
what
of
I
rocks.
mean? You know what I mean? And then to think about just how perfect Earth is and how long it's been around, that there's really no telling, man, how many civilizations that have existed and then it's been destroyed and it started again,
Now,
and
where
then
I'd
the
push back
sun.
with your word perfect. Now, I would say volcanoes that erupt and cover entire civilizations right? I don't know if we could say perfect. Or when meteors hit, that they can cause tsunamis and wipe out mass populations, right? So
Yeah,
it's like
man, but that's
perfect is it might be,
I don't know.
it's
I don't know. I don't know
most of the
because
time it works pretty well.
yeah, I mean,
Tsunami, not so perfect. Hurricane that
but
wipes
it's
out the
still,
entire Caribbean, not so perfect.
but it still means that everything is doing what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And so, in that sense of just it being perfect, like, yeah,
Wash and
what would you expect?
rinse, wash, repeat. You mean?
You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, like, come on, just be honest, man. Like, if there's anything wrong with the Earth, it's us. To be
Right.
honest,
No, I knew that's where you're going.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of
We are.
like,
It's like they had it right in the Matrix. It's like you are the, what do they say? You are the termite or whatever they
yeah,
called
man,
us. What they
it's
call us?
us. If
Cockroach.
anything's
They were like, you
exactly.
are the, yeah. They were like,
If
you are the
anything's
bug.
wrong with the Earth, bro, it's obviously us.
Yeah, the
Of
Earth
course,
is
any
well
form
flagged.
of devastation and tragedy, I just believe that Earth, nature. Of course, I believe in just there being something in control, a deity of some sort, and then just everything on Earth does what it's supposed to
See,
do.
that's where our general debate is, where we've said we have similarities, but I believe there's no deity that's in control. Control to
Yeah,
me is I don't disbelieve in deity. Deity makes sense to me. The control part, there's zero evidence for it unless you want to consult text, right? And you have to at
right.
some point jump to faith. You have to jump to faith and go, well, this is what I believe. I mean, because for me, there's no evidence of that. We can say that there's circumstantial evidence or whatever, but that's where I differ with saying the control part. It's like, really?
Yeah,
There's control? Like, it don't look like control to me from just a person observing from far away. It might be in control, but we have no idea what's behind that rationale. So it's like, it don't look like that to me, is what I say. So
I
that's
think it does. I think you see. I think the control, or for lack of a better word, the control or the influence is in the fact that everything else does what it's supposed to do.
influence I can more gel with. But control is like control to me gets into like cause, and it gets into the whole thing where arguments break down for me with no matter really what the religion is with the whole free will like thing. Like this is
Yeah,
in all classical debates, and it's like I've wrapped my head around that one for a long time, and always think about that one. And that's where it's like whenever people are super sure is when I get scared. And people are like, I'm gonna bet my life on this is right. And it's like, really? Like, I think the Warriors are gonna lose in 4, right? like it's like I ain't willing to bet on it, but like my prediction was Celts in 4, and people are like, really? And it's like but all of a sudden when you start to see something, you start to go, oh wow, that's looking really like it's like I don't have a premonition, I don't have a special ball. I'm just like I believe that now I might be disproven tomorrow, and I'm not gonna sit around and go, see, I was right. No, if the Warriors win a game, I was wrong, right? It's like
right.
I'm not gonna try to fit it into this mold and this narrative and be like, see, I was right
Yeah.
all along.
So that's what we definitely agree on the fact that I think that there's certain institutions that exist in our society. Some forms of religion are that way, in the fact that people aren't as willing to accept that there's some things that you just can't explain.
Right.
And there's some
Well, there's
answers
a
to some
lot you can't
questions that you
explain.
just
Yeah,
that you
there's
just
a
don't
lot.
have. And for me, it's better. And to me, that's why I'm so so persuaded about the influence of God, because again, like everything is systemic. Like it seems
But to me,
like
influence is a step down from control, right?
okay,
Like control and influence to me are two like big steps that we take. You know what I mean? Like
but
I
even
can
when
I can even
chaos
grant
breaks
you
out,
influence, but it's like
yeah.
control is like where I'm like, whoo, like
But peep this though, peep this. So even with the things that we would consider disasters or catastrophe,
right,
that in our mind, in our human, in our
right,
in our finite thinking,
right.
where we think things are out of control,
Mm-hmm.
there's a logical explanation for why volcanoes behave the way they do, or why storms behave the way they do,
Oh,
why
absolutely.
the solar system operates. And so there's, to me, that's that variation of control where we think it's chaotic, things don't look like they're in control, but everything does what it's supposed to do.
Well, and that kind of gets into sort of the underpinnings of chaos theory. Like when things look crazy, really there's an undergirding of logic beneath the scene that is at not first apparent. And you could say, yeah, when you zoom out more and more at some point, that's what people say when you step back, right? Get perspective. It's like when you step back, ironically, or zoom really in, right? Is when you can gain a different kind of perspective on what it is that you're looking at and think about. So like on a macro sense, if you zoomed way out and you go, oh, that's what the universe is. Oh, that's what the earth is. Now I get it, you know. And chaos theory has a bit of that to it too, without getting into the nerdy part of it. It's kind of like, oh, it looks like a mess up here, but when you zoom out, you're like, oh, now
really
you know, without getting into all the, you know, butterfly effect.
It's a perfect storm. Like
until you think like we are an entity with a brain that is logical, that can think and reason, right? And we've done unbelievably amazing things with our little brain and collectively, right? I was going to say collectively, right? And it's like, yeah, as a collective species, right? And there's going to be defects in that, right?
Absolutely.
Just like we were talking about before, where it's like, you know, there goes the gene pool with the people that are going to reach their hat in the ride at Great Adventures or Six Flags or whatever. It says like, do not reach in the ride. Whoosh, that person gets offed. It's kind of like, you know, you just advance the collective gene pool, right? It's like, but we could all fall victim to that at any time. But it's crazy when you think it's at any time. But what's crazy is you and I and our children have managed from the start of time, right? To survive long enough to procreate, right? And it's like the odds of that are
amazing.
Impossible.
Yep.
Right? But here we are, you know? Here we are. And it's like, and when you think of the grand survival gene that we have to all have by being here, right? And literally everyone has ever been born, but just even more so each iteration, it's just harder. Like my son is the last one of the males with my last name, right? Like all it needs to happen is he doesn't have a child. All it needed to happen was I didn't get married and have a kid, and it would have been, you know, and he might have 10. And then there's like a million more from that 10,
and the probability opens back up.
Or it's 0, right? He ends the link, crazy, you know? Bro. And it's just so crazy, right? And it's like when you think about his unborn child, if there is to be one, it's like the potential of that. And it's so crazy when, you know, and here's where we really, really lose people. So again, I do a lot of work with quantum, and I'm part of Quantum Steam, and we talk about these big issues all the time, right? That we don't understand. Like we understand that it works. We know what it's doing, right? We know the rules of the system, but we have no idea what it means, right? Like, I mean, the how it's working is kind of what we don't know, right? Like we know, we can say this is what's happening. Right. We have no idea how, right? And it's the more you look at Einstein and classical physics, or you can even look at Newtonian leading to the lineage of Einstein, right? Like Newtonian gravity and so forth, and, you know, first laws of thermodynamics, those kind of things, right? Sort of classical physics. And then you get to quantum, which is about 100 years old. And people think now, because of the proliferation of the internet, like quantum started yesterday, right? It's 100 years old, right? And so it's like for 100 years, like Einstein and, you know, his pals, you know, Fermi, all these people trying to look at this and go, this can't be right. Like Einstein is sitting there with 2 of his best buds, and they're looking at this and they're going, this doesn't make any sense. And his famous quote, of course, is God doesn't play dice with the universe, right? It was like, no, it can't just be probability. And what happens when you look at a quantum system is it's only a probability that you will be right there. It's only probability that you're there, because at one point you're not there. And it's until I look at you, you don't actually appear. We're talking about electrons right now, you know. We talk about a proton, really, right?
Right. About, that also explains how we're kind of like universally connected in a way too, without, you know, physically being in a place.
And what it gets to, this is what's crazy, and my son is a huge fan now. What it gets to is it sounds a lot like the Force in Star Wars, right? It sounds like, you know, the living life particles that are in all things or whatever. And it makes Star Wars not that crazy. But then again, Star Wars was birthed after the fact that we knew what quantum was, and there's an inkling in Lucas's mind, right, about not only sci-fi and the influence of maybe even Star Trek that came before it, and he had some Taoist influence in him, right, like the Tao, Tao, you know, like some of the Force and the way, and, you know, the very tau, but at the same time, it's very quantum physics like, when you start reading it, and you're like, this is this art imitating science, or is it science imitating art, vice versa? Where does it flip? And you're like, there's some merit there, but it's crazy when we look at quantum, like literally a particle can be in two places at the exact same time. And only chooses where to be once it's looked at. And I'll say that again for everybody listening. A particle can be in two places at the exact same time and is until you look at it, and then it decides where it's going to be. Right.
Yep,
and like, you have to say that about 10 times to really grapple with that fact and be like, and by the way, once you know a property of this guy right here, right, if it's entangled with its partner, it can be light years away, and it knows this guy's been looked at. Once this guy's been looked at, this guy like shimmies the same way, actually the opposite way. But in other words, let's say this is blue, this guy's instantly red. Once it's looked at, it's like, I've been seeing the other guy a bazillion miles away knows it at exactly the same time. What does that mean, right?
That's amazing, bro.
Like what does that mean?
It's amazing. So you mentioned too, just like how miraculous it is. You talk about the survival gene, but just even at the point of conception, though, right? Even that part of it, with the egg and the sperm and all that, man. Just even conception itself,
it's mind blowing.
It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. Like how many possibilities.
Right. But what's the real funny part is it because we're human, we tend to think of that as a human thing. It happens in all life, right? It's like all life. There's a fertilization egg kind of process, essentially, right?
It's crazy.
Of all the bazillions of species, this is the essence of one of the essence when we define what life is. And it's funny, even getting into that, we don't have a great definition when you really dig down of what life actually is. And you know what other one we don't have a great definition for? Energy. do you ever feel like you're fudging it with the definition, man? The ability to do work. Like that's a cheeseball definition.
Yeah,
right?
that's a, you know what, 100 maybe 200 years from now, that definition is going to be so primitive. Maybe not even that far.
The ability to do work.
That's so primitive because it just correlates with how we use energy. Yeah. But when you think about it, energy is in everything.
Yeah.
Right. I was just looking at a ad about a charged cell. It was a storm, and you could see the energy that existed in the cloud. Like it was just amazing. Or even just driving by windmills, or people don't realize like the solar, or how electrons exist in water and like the connectivities induce like electrocution stuff. You just think about energy, and you have to know that our definition is primitive because it's such a powerful force that we really don't have a full grasp of.
Yeah,
its potential. I mean, we're kind of digging into stuff too now, like with just like solar energies, how we use solar energy and wind energy and water and Tesla and some of those things, how we get into cars that are powered by things other than gas and stuff like that. And we just really, I don't feel like we even scratched the surface.
Oh no, I mean, but when you look at the billions that are being spent at the CERN laboratory in Switzerland, you can understand where a lot of these developments are coming from. We're literally accelerating particles and smashing them together in particle accelerators at ridiculous speeds that are close to the speed of light to see what happens. And then we go, that's what the math said this was going to happen, and it did. So now we know something with a little bit more precision, and it has a bunch of entailments, if you will, logical, conclusions that you can make, or therefore this, then this, right? And people will say, why are we doing all this stuff? Well, it's tough to explain all the science and math behind something like a CERN laboratory, right? But it's like when you look at what's being done there and the advancements that have been made, it's ridiculously crazy. And there's a reason why people are spending umpteen billions of dollars, right? Just to dig a hole in the ground and build, when you think about even electromagnetism, when you think of like that word, right? Electromagnetism, right? It's like electricity and magnet, right? Are like inherently the same sort of thing, right? And it's like you think of light, right? Like light is essentially electromagnetism, right? It's like the property of light has to do with intimately a magnet and electricity, right? And it's like magnets are freaking magic, right? Magnets, like the maglev trains, that makes a train levitate, right? Above the ground and go like 400 miles an hour. We have those on Earth, right? We are clever, furry little apes is what we are, right? We can take a train and make it float and go 400 miles an hour, or we can put a spaceship in space and go like 20,000 miles per hour. So the thing is, where I'm always tempted to say to people, and like even to you to a point, I don't think this is what you fully meant, but I would remind people that when we go, there's just certain things that we're not supposed to know. That's what your grandmother was saying. I would say pause on that, because like mine said it too, and you're just certain. I don't believe there's certain things you're not supposed to know. I believe there's a lot of stuff we don't know. And
That's
by
the truth.
definition, there will be a lot of things you and I don't know, right? But there's no limit really to what humans can't solve, because we've only been, like I said, we've only been here 300,000 years. Are you freaking kidding me? What we've been able to do, been able to do is impossible. Right? It's impossible what we've been able to do. We can freaking fly through the heavens, right? We have figured out the underpinnings of what's making the universe go around. I mean, we've figured out, truthfully, with some, varying degrees of accuracy, but we figure out, we can say, there's over 150 billion galaxies, that all of those have over it's closer to 250 billion. The thresholds just keep moving up, right? You could say, let's use 250 billion galaxies, and each one of them has 250 billion stars in each one of them. Right? And it's like when you start throwing that stuff out there, and this is what I mean about when you take it back to any religion that you want to, right? All religions have to stop it. Like this, and this will piss off a lot of people, but I'm sorry, because stop it with, this book has it 100% right. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have it all right.
Can't cover everything.
No, there's no way you can. So stop pretending the inflappable word of the whatever, the Torah, the Bible, the Ava Gita, whatever you want. It's not inflappable. It was written by dumbass humans. Right? And it's like, as much as I'm saying we're brilliant, people. Yeah, we're brilliant over time. We're not brilliant when we come out the chute. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it doesn't cover it all. It's a small fraction of, it's probably not all right, because we are flawed. Right? So there may be a perfect almighty creator sitting out there, but we have a glimpse. It's like the Plato in the cave, kind of the allegory of the cave. It's like, we got a small glimpse of what that is. We might think we got it all right, but we got that much to go. And that's all I'm saying. I'm saying we can learn anything, but we got to admit when we're wrong sometimes. It's like, it's either allegory or it's not. It's either metaphor or it's not. It's either translation issue or it's not. Like in the beginning, God snaps and there's everything. And it's like, as an afterthought, God just creates all the stars in the sky after he's been toiling on the earth, right, for all this time. And it's like, and he just farts out 250 billion other, like you've been wrestling with this earth thing for a long time, but because we didn't understand what space was when the freaking Bible was written, we didn't know. We didn't know. There was no divinely inspired person who said, I have it all figured out. Where was it? It would have been written. It wouldn't. So stop. I want to shake people when they do that. Like, we're wrong, dude.
in defense to certain religions, especially like the Quran, the Bible, I think one of the things, as far as like the figured out part, isn't just like having all of the answers to life itself. I think it's more about having it figured out from the perspective on how to get through life.
Right. Like a roadmap. That's what I was thinking about. Like roadmap to success, right?
Right. It's kind of more like that when it's in.
But you ain't gonna answer on what happened for the whole history of humanity with just those
nothing
chapters.
Nothing has that.
And people like to pretend that it's like we have everything in here. No, you don't. You have a small sliver.
That's the truth, man.
Don't pretend that you got all that.
There's a lot of questions, bro. Listen, I read books, and I believe wholeheartedly in the scriptures, and I believe there's principles outside of the Bible that are in the Quran and in other religions that I've gleaned from and are practical and applicable to just everyday life. And you'd be surprised, honestly, how much those things, those different religions actually, especially the main world religions, how much they honestly have in common, even though they may use different words for their.
They all have golden rule in common. That's sure.
They definitely all have golden rule in common, and basically like this degree of faith too, or this of belief all exists within them all too.
Yeah.
And so, and even just that alone just kind of tells you that, you know, no one person individually, like as far as humanity, just really had it all figured out as far as could give you everything that you ever needed to know that was ever invented or created or ever existed, all in just one book.
Right.
And so, yeah, you just have to be, and that's always been one of my messages too, and to some of my religious friends in the sectors and stuff that I roll with, is just like, you just have to be not necessarily wavy or just uncertain about your faith, but be more open-minded about the possibilities that exist outside of what's written in the
be
book.
open-minded to the fact that you might be wrong on a lot of stuff, and the person next to you might be wrong, no matter how sure they seem. Which takes me to the Celtics. So my friend Mark, shout out to Marcus Behat the Heat, right? When I posted the other day before the series started, I said Celts in 4, right? And he immediately posed, "Want to bet?" Right? And I'm like, "No, bro, I don't bet. Like, I derive no fun from betting on anything, right? Like, if I knew the future, right, I would feel like I'm cheating, like to do
That's
like what they
truth,
do,
bro.
You know, like, yeah, I would feel like, you know, like in Back to the Future, they're like, get the lottery numbers and go back and win $1 bazillion. Like, I'd probably be tempted and probably lose because I'm a weak human. Again, I'm not perfect. At some point, maybe I would, but in my head right now, when I'm just theorizing about, I'm like, that just doesn't seem right to me, right? And I guess what I'm saying is a long drawn out way of saying is that I don't feel compelled to bet about something, even if I think I'm right. I don't feel the need to go, you're wrong, right? Like, I just think the Celts are going to win in 4, right? Now, if I'm wrong, and I'm good with it. And this is, thanks, Tree. I see those shamrocks.
You really believe the Celts are going to win?
I really believe the Celts are going to win in 4. And so,
God bless you, sir.
And so let's get into it. So here's why. And this is what we advertised. We're going to talk a little bit about a little NBA, right? Here's why. All right. The movie for this Celtics team, I feel like, has already been written. I feel like I'm watching the movie. I feel like when the Celts made the decision not to tank it and take on New Jersey, that they were saying, we are them dudes, right? We're not dodging New Jersey. We're going to take on New Jersey. And everyone knew, if you looked at that you had to play Milwaukee next, assuming Milwaukee won, right?
Right.
And in the same way as I knew, I was like, man, we're probably going to end up playing Miami too, a team that always plays us tough, right? Miami's got lockdown defense. Jimmy Buckets is a stud. He always plays tough against the Celtics, right? Yeah. They got shooters from deep. Right now, granted, Tyler Hero was hurt or whatever, so we benefited from that, right?
Milwaukee doesn't really give me that playoff offensive vibe, though. That's been dominating the playoffs.
They worry me with Middleton. I mean, they play the Celtics tough as well, right? But I'm like, you know what? Even with Middleton, even with Hero, I think the Celtics can just beat them, right? I think they can. I'm not saying like I didn't feel like Celtics are gonna win at 4 over like Milwaukee or whatever. But here's the thing with the Warriors. We know all the talk that everyone's saying, and I've watched all those games. I've watched every Celtic game for like, oh my gosh, since when I bought my first flat screen TV in the 2008 series to watch the Celtics. I've watched pretty much because I record every game since then, right? I don't miss a Celtic game, right? So I'm like a real hardcore fan, right? So I've seen every game. I've seen all those games when people are like, oh yeah, they have the best record against the Warriors. They're 9-7. I'm just saying, eyeball test. When the Celtics play the Warriors, there's no fear. Ever. It's like even last night, you watched the game. I'm assuming you saw the game, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Of course,
definitely
right? Even though everyone's talking about the fourth quarter, every time the Warriors made a run, the Celtics were just like, okay, we'll bang in a 3. We'll play some tight defense. We'll cut that lead right back down. No one's talking about that. And no one's talking about the fact that they cut every lead down. No matter how big of a lead, all of a sudden, I was like, I feel good. I'm like, yep, Warriors up 10. I still feel good because the Celtics are knocking down buckets and playing solid D. Now, they played stupid on Steph in the first quarter. I was like, what are they doing? But this is part of my reason why I believe they're going to win. They can adjust to play every person. If you go man-to-man at every person on that team, they have an answer for every one of those players. Steph is the closest thing they don't have an answer to, but that's why I posted the other thing on my page. I'm like, Pritchard is going to play a role in this series because Pritchard can get in the game because he can match up to Curry. He's a poor man's Curry. Pritchard is a poor man's Curry.
Yeah,
and he's going to be an offensive weapon in the series for us when he gets in there, assuming he's hitting the shots. he was on beast mode going into the playoffs. He couldn't miss a 3-pointer going into the playoffs for like the last 15 game beast mode. And I get it. Most bigger guards, he doesn't match up. Well, you can't play him against Jimmy Buckets. He's going to get eaten alive.
They couldn't play him against Drew Holiday.
Right.
Yeah, he's kind of out of it.
Right. Marcus Smart had a tough time against Jimmy Buckets and Drew Holiday and all these kind of people. Those people are pit bulls, right? You can't play Pritchard. Pritchard is solid, though, on D. They would try, they're going to use him and expose him. They're exposing him because these are 6'7" dudes he's playing against. He's like 6 feet tall, right? Like he's like Steph Curry is like legitimately 2 inches taller than Pritchard. They list Pritchard at like 6'2" or something, but it's like,
yeah, he's 6 feet even.
Yeah, they list Steph Curry at 6'3", and he probably is 6'3". I'm 6'3". I'm 6'3" and a little extra, right? Like I might be 6'3" and an eighth, right? But it's like if I'm wearing shoes, I can get away with saying I'm 6'4". But if I take my shoes off, it might not even say 6'3" and a little bit. It's probably saying exactly 6'3" if I stick my head up high, right? And it's like I'm the same freaking height as Steph Curry. Everyone who's ever met me my entire life go, "Yo, that dude's tall." I've never had anyone call me short. My entire life, I've been the tallest, maybe the second tallest person. And what I'm saying is I'm a huge human. Right? I'm 6'3". Steph Curry's freaking 6'3". He's not short. Stop it with that. He's a legit 6'3", right? And people are like, oh, he's a short. No, these people are huge. Steph Curry's 6'3", right? Like he really is. He's taller than his brother, right? Like he's 6'3". Now, Pritchard, he's about 6 feet, maybe 6'1", right? And I'm just saying that he can match up with Steph Curry. And they don't have big, strong players outside of Draymond that are really going to scare you, right? That are like, they got, I'm not calling them soft, but they are.
But they are.
They're petite,
team, bro. They're a finesse team. I mean,
yes.
They basically play small ball. I mean, they had to make that adjustment with Kevon Looney because of that same reason, because they're a small ball, petite type of team.
Yes.
They had to completely change their complexion and line of the way they played the game,
right?
Because they were getting pounded,
right,
by Memphis, especially because of the fact that they are just a petite team. I mean, your center is 6'6",
right? And this is all I was saying. I was like, the Warriors of the past. Some of the same players on their team, but like, let's say a younger and non-injured version, right? Like Clay is not that lockdown defender that he was like 4 years ago before the injury.
Milwaukee was you guys' worst competitor.
Yes, yes. This team feels like a vacation to the Celtics. Yeah. From far away, I'm looking at them and going, they're going to be food to the Celtics. Now, I'm not saying they can't win a game. Of course they can. They could conceivably beat the Celtics because they're that otherworldly shooters. That what they have us beaten on is they're better shooters. But guess what? If you play porous defense on the Celtics, they're going to look like all-stars because they're all good. There's not even the people we call bad shooters on the Celtics, they're not bad when they're open. And guess what? You know why we're open? Because we freaking pass the ball like nobody's business.
Man, Tatum had double-digit assists, man. I'm going to tell you the two things that stood out to me the most about the game from yesterday that was really impressive to me was, number one, when Steph Curry had an amazing first quarter and the Celts were still in the game. And number two, to know that Tatum was not a factor the entire game.
Nope.
The entire game. And
not shooting the ball.
And Boston still managed to find a way to win the basketball game. To me, those were the most two scariest factors.
And he just really shut up and passed the ball. He was like, look, I need. But you know what? Honestly, he was passing the ball from the first second. He had 2 assists within the first minute, right?
I said that to my son. I got a text thread with my son. I was telling him that if anyone beats the Celtics, it won't be Jason Tatum. It's going to be the others, because I even just thought that the game plan going into it for Golden State would be to just like, I'm not letting Jason Tatum
focus on Jason Tatum. Yeah, they're going to focus on Jason Tatum and focus on Jaylen Brown a little bit, and it's a bad plan because here's the deal. When you think of people who are smash mouth in your face, when you picture a Celtic going in and dunking the ball or blocking, who do you think? Like, who's going to make a vicious block or vicious dunk? You can probably name 6 players, right? Like, you can name 6 players who might stick it back in your. Like, you could imagine Tatum slapping you up against the blackboard, dunking it in your face. You can imagine Jaylen Brown dunking on you hardcore,
and probably
swatting
Robert
you up.
Williams.
Right. You can imagine Robert Williams lobbing, smashing, dunking. Who else can you imagine swatting you? You can imagine Al swatting your crap and getting out of here. Who else is going to swat you? Marcus Smart is going to go up and swat that ball on you. And who else is a pit bull on defense? the other Williams is a pit bull on defense. And you know who else is
Grant
a lockdown
Williams
defender?
is a pit bull too.
A lockdown defender. White is a lockdown defender. And when you start getting players that are passing the ball on a string and are lockdown defenders, they can beat anybody on any given night. And the Warriors are not tough. They're not tough.
Then that's not how they're built. That's not their pedigree. They're gonna have that was.
But they can go out and hit 50 shots and beat you.
So the key to it was, there was the first half and second half were two different halves, like completely different halves. When Golden State played their game up tempo, faster pace, they prevailed. It worked for them because they're a finesse team, they're a run and gun team, they're a shoot team. But when you allow Boston, because they have such great defense, when you play half court basketball, it's harder to score because Golden State's not physical enough.
Yeah, you're not going to score in the Celtics in half court.
So if you're going
unless you're draining threes like Steph.
Which is what you're going to see. The adjustment that Golden State is going to make in game 2 is that they're going to be a lot more aggressive at getting to the basket, because that's the only other way that you can beat Boston.
Yeah, I don't know how well that's going to go for them, but what I would say is they're going to find their opportunities. Like I would expect you're right. They're going to have to try to take it to the basket more. The difference is, so far, Williams looks healthy. Williams looks like the Williams pre-injury, right? Like he looked like Williams. He was leaping. He didn't look like he was limping and hobbling. He was limping and hobbling through most of those series so far. Yeah. And it's been like you've been holding your breath, going, "Oh man, I hope he's okay."
Except that one
extra rest
when he got his shot blocked, and I think he was just kind of playing it off because he was kind of embarrassed.
Maybe, yeah.
He kind of grabbed his leg. Nothing wrong with you. You all right, brother? Get back up court.
I mean, after a while, it gets to be habit, you know. But anyways, no, he looked generally healthy, and it's like. And I was saying to myself, when is he going to put Williams back in? Yo, he put Williams back in, and it looked like a different team. I'm talking like fourth quarter when you had Williams back in there. Yeah, and it's like you don't need him in the whole time.
Offensive rebounding.
Oh my gosh.
The energy and the toughness that he brings, that's something that Golden State would have kind of had. You know, they struggled with the size, but James Wiseman's been hurt pretty much the whole year. Yep. And they were kind of developing him in that toughness Draymond role, but so he had the length that Draymond didn't have. And Kevon Looney's tough. He's probably the toughest player they have outside of Draymond. But the problem with Kevon Looney is that he's had 2 hip surgeries and he looks like an old man when he's out there.
Sure does.
Like coming out of high school, you know, they had him predicted to be the next Kevin Durant. He was growing, he was athletic, you know, he was basically a guard. He could handle the ball, he could shoot the ball. And then I think that crazy growth spurt he had kind of messed with his hips a little bit. And so he had to have surgery. And now he's just like an old man. He doesn't look athletic at all. And that kind of hurts him. So it's just kind of like you got another Draymond, basically.
I mean, at least he can play a little smash mouth. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. He's definitely the reason they won in Memphis. He had like 20 boards and then kind of changed the complexion of the series and how it was.
I mean, if you have a lesser than offensive player on the court, the Celtics are gonna lock you up, and
that's the problem. He's a liability.
You need You need 5 functioning offensive weapons out there to beat the Celtics.
And then you got
if you don't, and if you don't have five studs out there playing them, you just better have somebody who can really shoot that ball, because the Celtics will sag off of you on some 3-point shooters. I mean, they were doing it to Steph last night. I'm like, what are they doing?
You know, it's like what they were doing.
I mean, some of it looked like just mistakes, but yeah. But I was like, oh, watch what happens in the second quarter, and exactly what I thought would happen. He ain't gonna score. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not scoring.
Milwaukee was the team that I think of Middleton, that would have been a different series. That was the only team, man, that was
right. And I would equally say if Middleton would have been in there and we had a healthy Rob, it would have been real close. Like Rob was basically not playing. I mean, Al didn't play one of those games, I believe, too. You know, like there were a lot of Marcus Smart was sitting out. You know, like.
But the way Giannis was handling Jason Tatum on both ends of the court, man, it was just like, geez, they're physical, and nobody's as physical as Boston. Grant Williams has been very impressive this whole playoff run. It'd be interesting to see, though. I haven't seen a consistent Boston team without Jason Tatum dominating. Right. So that's going to be interesting to see if they can maintain that. People were making shots last night for Boston that didn't usually make shots.
I think Tatum for the series, and I stand by it, I think he's going to average 39 and 8. That's what he's going to average. Here's why. There's nobody who actually matches up with it. He was just missing shots, right? They had a great defensive scheme for him, but it wasn't anything that he hasn't seen before. They were like, oh, they boxing one. He's been boxing one before, and he's smoked people. He had a bad shooting night. He threw up an air ball on his second shot. I was like, oh gosh, he's gonna be a little off.
Did they even go back to Boston?
No.
It went straight
they
to
flew right
State,
out here.
Right?
I think they skipped a couple days of practice too. They gave him time off or whatever. But you know, That stuff's gonna happen. You're gonna have your best player not always, be stroking the ball when they're focusing in on that player in the playoffs. Like you got to deal with it, and but you're gonna have your game like that. That's gonna happen.
Yeah,
But here's
that's
the
the
deal.
truth.
Here's the
Because
deal.
Steph's been struggling like that all playoff long.
Right.
His shooting
But
strokes
here's
bad.
the deal, though. You got to pick your poison, because now guess what? There are gonna be a lot of open Jason Tatum shots in this next one because everyone's hitting the ball. They're gonna be. You think they're gonna leave Al open from 3-point land like that as much as they were? Oh, it's just Al. Did you hear how they were dismissive of him? Oh, it's Al and White and Marcus Smart. Okay, leave Marcus Smart wide open. I agree with you. That might be your best play to do, but he can hit a wide open 3-pointer. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want him
I don't
shooting.
think they're gonna change their strategy because
I don't think they are either.
They were winning the game up until like the last, and for them to have
They
like
feel
almost
comfortable saying that,
5 minute.
but they blew every one of those leads every single time they went up. They go up. Sometimes they went up at 16 at one point, and I was like, oh man, here comes the splash. But I'm like, this is where the Celts lock in, and they did.
Then Steph didn't score anymore, and that kind of like died down because Klay's not the same on both ends, and they were leaving Draymond open, which was a smart play, and you just kind of got two people in your offensive rotation. That's kind of a liability because you don't really have to worry about Looney. You don't have to worry about Draymond. Draymond is almost practically just non-existent.
Yeah.
He's not even really
we think
shoot.
of Draymond like the old Draymond. It's like, this ain't the same Draymond. This is Draymond. You know what Draymond is right now to me? On a regular night in the playoffs against the Celtics, you know what he is? He's a 9, 8, and 7 guy. Like, that's great. 9, 8, and 7 is great. Like, if you could play against me 9, 8, and 7, but it ain't what he's used. It ain't 17, 12, and 10. You know what I'm saying? It's like he's like a 9, 8, and 7 guy, and this plus or minus a few on those. That's a nice player. He's Grant Williams. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but Grant Williams, I'd rather see shooting the 3 than Draymond. You know what I'm saying? He's Grant Williams.
It's going at least 6 games. In my prediction,
it could. 6. The only way that happens, though, this is why I was saying Celts in 4. The only way that happens, though, is if the Celts can't commit to locking down that softer team than any of the teams that they've played. And I'm just saying, they've locked down every team when they've needed to. It's like, yeah, the Celtics might give away a game. They might give away 2. They could give away 3. They could give away 4 if they start blasting and the Celtics go through. But I haven't seen the Celtics lose back-to-back games in the playoffs. And
they haven't. They have not. They have not.
And what Celtics win when they need to win. It's like people are like, oh, they haven't been tested. What are you watching? They've been tested. The second half of the season, they were elite in every area of the court, and they've been elite in the playoffs and have managed to get it done whenever they had to. I'm like, this team is not losing. You can see the writing on the wall. The Celtics are going to win the series before the series started. All this first did is it confirmed for a lot of people who haven't watched the Celtics all year just how much that ball moves on a string. I said my knock on the Celtics before the season started, I was like, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown shoot too much. They don't pass the ball. They want to be alpha dogs. They want to say, whenever I drive to the ball, I can't stand watching people play basketball that are committed to like, yo, I'm aggressive, so I'm going to take it all the way. Don't take it freaking all the way when there's 3 people on you. Pass the ball. Like, that's why I posted the other day what I did. Aggressive, be aggressive. It's the most overused, stupid phrase in all of the NBA. Every freaking one of those players out there is an expert at being aggressive, right? It's being aggressive isn't what's going to get you over the hump. They're all aggressive, right? That's why they're there. The worst NBA player is the most aggressive dude you know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you think of White on the Celtics, like, oh, he's just happy-go-lucky. That dude would score 200 points on you at the local gym. You know, he's 6'7", a lockdown defender, has handles like a point guard. And we go, oh, he kind of is a junkie shooter. You know what that dude would do to you on the court, right?
Absolutely.
They're all aggressive. You know,
and
it's like, stop with the aggressive. What they need to do is stop trying to ram it down everyone's throat on every play and go, I'm open. I'm not. That's what they teach you in AAU. You open. You the man. You want scouts to look at you. You take that ball to the hole. That's stupid play. And what happened? And younger players are going to do that. And you get to the league when everyone's elite. And you know what you need to do? You need to pass to the open man. You need to do what people don't like that LeBron does. He passes and defers when people are open. That's what wins championships. And he's got a few. He's got a few.
I will say this, that the perspective of aggression, though, when it comes to sport, it doesn't have to always be. I mean, if you're a cerebral player and you're intelligent, you're an intelligent player, aggression doesn't always mean, you know, in the way it's used, doesn't necessarily mean you have to score the basketball.
Right. I agree.
Sometimes, you know, be aggressive means, in other words, attack the team, attack the defensive. Because in playing sports, I know there's times, and there are mentalities and there are switches where you have times where you're
no
not
one's stopping me. I need to take those to the hole. And
right. And that's kind of more of like that aggression part. And there's times where you're playing and you're just hooping, and just kind of like you're intentional. I need to get my teammates involved.
Right.
And so, you know, there are mindsets that you kind of go throughout the game. And if, like, for example, with Golden State, their strategy needs to be more about attacking the basket. If you have a team full of shooters, if you're not going to give me the easier layup, then you're going to have to leave someone open. And that's, to me, is going to benefit them.
And here's the thing. The switch happened for Jason Tatum midway through the season. They said it was going to be the focus. Udoka was like, this is going to be the focus. Jaylen Brown, we're going to get him his assist numbers up. It was a slow process. It didn't happen right away. He wasn't 100% committed to it, and he did. And he started committing to it. And Marcus Smart got mad at everybody. We know about that story too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he had some stuff to say
but
to
he had
Jaylen
to
Brown
learn how to be a point guard too. So that
Absolutely.
was an adjustment phase. That needed
Absolutely.
to happen.
Because I'll tell you what, Marcus Smart, you gonna tell me he's not aggressive? He's aggressive, right? Like he's aggressive on every play.
Man,
now,
his assist to turnover ratio has been spectacular.
Absolutely.
He has evolved into a great point guard.
Is he shooting 20 shots a game? Usually not, right? You don't have to shoot 20 shots to be aggressive, right? It's like Al Horford. You're going to tell me, like, yeah, he can, like, disappear. Some people say, yeah, you know why he disappeared? Because he passing the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like, Al Horford is the fundamental. Defense. Like, Al Horford is not big fundamentals like San Antonio big fundamentals. Yeah. He's not that kind of big fundamental. He's big fundamentals, and he always does the right play. And sometimes he is flashy. Like, he will be. Like, that dude don't look like he turned 36 yesterday, ever. Like, I've been saying that when he was on the Celtics. They just had too many hotheads at that time where Al wasn't a perfect complementary piece. He was the glue of the Celts then, but Jaylen and Jason were not who they are now. They have more committed to the pass. And I'm going to tell you another unheralded person. White is a pass-first dude. So if you put White on the court with Al and you have a committed Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown also moves the rock when he needs to. And granted, he'll shoot when he's feeling it. And I don't mind him doing it because when he's feeling it, it's usually a good sign. Yeah. You know, those dudes, and you got Rovin, Rob just looking for it. And Marcus is committed to passing the ball as well. Yo, they're a tough team. They're a tough out, bro.
Yeah,
they're
bro.
Tough out.
Yeah, bro. Hey, man, I brought my shoe collection out today.
Oh, gosh.
Peeping.
It's a lot of one brand there. It's looking like a lot of one brand over there. It's
all the same brand, bro.
I see one brand out there, bro.
That's all the same, bro. It's about I got about 40, maybe 50 pair.
Man.
Yeah, man. I'm collecting. I was collecting and selling.
Oh, yeah.
I was collecting and selling.
You know what I got?
Keeping on my sizes.
It's the only thing I haven't opened in a long time. I got the Celtic pop socket right here, man. I got that.
Yeah, bro. So I'm excited about the series, man. Golden State's gonna have to switch it up.
I think if Golden State's gonna win, it's gonna happen. If Golden State's gonna win, they're gonna win tomorrow night, and that could carry over to winning in the Garden
in Boston. Yeah,
but guess what? I don't think so, but I could be wrong. But the problem with Golden State and why they're so good is because they have the ability to light it up from anywhere, and obviously, C. Steez is feeling the same thing because I see that my man C. Steez has jumped on in, man. What up, C. Steez? I can't see C. Steez, but I know that he's there. Where'd you go?
I'm also expecting to see Kuminga get some playing time in his next game. For that same reason, they need more length and athleticism.
Yeah, I agree.
In the game, and someone that can get to the basket. Kind of like Andre Wiggins. I expect him to be a little more in attack mode than he was. He was shooting too much and he wasn't really scoring. And so he's the one player that's supposed to be the athletic one that attacks and gets to the rim.
Right.
And so when he starts shooting, it just kind of makes them one-dimensional, and that's the worst part. When they become too one-dimensional, I don't care how much you shoot the ball, bro. If you cannot get easy buckets, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And as much as people talk about Golden State and the Splash Brothers, what people always forget to remember is that the defensive rating is always high, And that's had been the pedigree for how they won those
Right.
championships, because they've always been off and on with shooting the ball. There's just no way to sustain that.
And I think you need a more committed Steph facilitation. I think Steph needs to tone it down a notch, honestly. I realized that he was killing it in the first quarter, but they don't have the same ball movement that the Celtics do. And to me, he's like one of the only people who can actually do it. Maybe Poole, I don't know. But to me, Poole is just a nimbly slasher guy who just kind of finds his way to the basket or whatever. And I think when you got Poole out there and Steph at the same time, you might have some more, moving the ball. Personally, if I was them, I'd start Poole. I'd have Poole out there. I'd have Steph. I'd play small ball against the Celtics. I'd play, and let them have they're going to have trouble. Rob, who's going to cover if you put a third guard out there for
that's
for
why
Golden
you can't
State?
do that. You can't do that. You
almost
cannot
have
do that.
to.
They would punish you.
You almost
with
have
Rob
to,
and Al
because
out
who's
there.
Rob going to cover though? Who's Rob going to cover? It's going to look kind of funny, right? Like Rob's going to be covering a guard. You know what I'm saying? And Rob's pretty nimble, but I'd be making Rob move. I'd be making a move band with a bad knee out there. I'd be like, you know what? We're gonna not put anybody out here who's like, above 6'8".
But
we're gonna play.
Steph's a kind of a liability on defense too. So you can't really, if you put 3 guards out there, you're gonna get destroyed.
I'd put Iguodala out there a little bit more. I'd put him. I'm telling you, I put Iguodala out there. I put Steph. I put Clay. I put Poole, and I put Draymond. I mean, that team could bother the Celtics, I think.
Back to the Hamptons 5 when they had KD.
Man.
That's kind of small ball team.
And I would obviously have Wiggins in there a lot of the game. I mean, I think Wiggins is their one bright spot in terms of match. I mean, I was thinking about Wiggins ahead of time. I was like, man, he could match up pretty well with the Jays. He can match up with either of them, really.
Yep.
And now it don't mean that he's going to contain either of them, but I'm just saying he matches up well, and he could be an issue, because he's the kind of guy that Rob can't really cover. He's also the kind of guy that Horford can't really cover. So if you got him out there as opposed to Iguodala, that's great. You could also get rid of Poole for a little bit and keep those two in there. I just think long, athletic bodies.
That's why I expect to see Kuminga a little bit.
Yeah, maybe Kuminga. Yeah. Maybe. But I'm like, yo, if Iguodala can get out there and stretch the floor, hit a few threes like he did yesterday, and play with some high energy, like maybe he gets up to 20 minutes.
Oh man, he looks it.
He didn't look that bad yesterday.
He don't look as good as Horford did.
No,
I think Iguodala may be a little older than Horford too.
Horford, if I told you he was 30, you'd believe me, right?
Absolutely.
If I said Horford's 30, you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. But we make a big deal, like, oh, he's 36. You know what I'm saying? Bro, yeah. I'm born in the 70s, bro. I can go out and play right now, and I've never been out on the court and been like, oh, I feel so tired. Like it's like they make such a big deal about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I'm so tired. It's like, bro, I play basketball literally all day, and I never go, oh, I'm tired. You know what I'm saying? Like, It's so overdone. You telling me you can't go out and play basketball for an hour, right? If you had to play the full game. Now, granted, I realize it's at a ridiculous speed and it's way sped up. I'm watching. We're watching the same game. We're watching the same game. I'll tell you what, when I go down to my local gym, it is nothing but fast break the whole game. It looks faster than an NBA game, and it's out of control, quite honestly, right? And like, I can play for 2 hours, and I'm like, they overblow this with it sells, dude, a 35-year-old or a 36-year-old that's in shape can play basketball. Iguodala, I don't know how old he is. What is he, 38, 37?
38, yeah, I think it's 38, something like
that. Bro, they blow it out of proportion, though, is what I'm saying. Yeah, compared to a dude who's 22 or whatever, yeah, you're going to look a little different or whatever, I guess. But it's like, dude, these dudes are elite athletes. Like, you know what I'm saying? No one's saying, show me your license. I want to see how old you are. When you're playing on the court, like, it just sounds good.
But I think the Olympics is probably the best representation that age does slow you down, like, inevitably. So, you don't usually see boxers boxing in their 40s.
It depends on the sport, though. And it depends on the
and exactly.
And the number is a variable for so many people. It's like
is.
It is. My mentality is I don't want to jump unless I have to. But it's not because I can't jump. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to jump and have you undercut my legs because I want to be able to come home and walk, And it's like, I think that is a big change. Like, it's the same thing like when Ray Allen was in his 30s playing on the Celtics when he was like 33, right? Like on the Celtics, people get all surprised when he would dunk. It's like, bro, he can't. It's not that he can't jump. is that he's smarter. Like
and
you
the
ain't
man
trying to.
6'7". He ain't really had to jump that high.
Yeah. Ray Allen was 6'5". Like, you know what I'm saying? But Ray Allen was 6'5", barely.
Easy. Right? And Jesus Shuttlesworth, and he was super athletic too.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like,
dude, he's got like the biggest calves in the history of the NBA. Like, absolutely. I mean, cannonballs. You know, like the dude can jump out the gym. You know, and it's like he'd bang on somebody when he was like 33, and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, it's right." It's like, dude, he wants to extend his career. You don't want to be dunking on everybody every second. You know, they'd be like, "Those old legs," and it's like, come on, bro, stop with all that. He's a ridiculously primed athlete. I'm sure Ray Allen can go out right now and reverse dunk on everyone at the local gym, and he's like 48. You know what I'm saying? It's like people make way too much out of that. Like like, you know, Jordan was fat and out of shape, and he was like 50. He was banging on people in the gym. You know. It was like, fat Jordan.
Yeah,
man. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I don't know, bro. I remember, and I have this conversation with my
Dominique Wilkins can dunk right now.
I couldn't run with my kids. As long as they run now, and I feel like I'm in good condition, and I love being, you know, mobile and athletic and stuff like that. But I don't know what it is, man. I don't know, man. And then just my body
wearing down. Well, you work a grueling job, bro.
Yeah, man. My body, bro. It's just, and my job's been off the chain, bro. You already know I'm this close to walking away, bro. I'm closer than I ever been.
It's closer than our flight.
I'm telling you, I'm like, it's you know how I feel about the flight. That's close.
Yeah, bro.
I'm closer than that.
I think you got to go back. You got to go back to not making the super big loot and just go back to the big loot.
I'm telling you, man. I really for me though, one of the impressions on this that's on me, bro, is that I'm passionate about all the things that I have kind of made secondary for all these years in order to be able to provide for my family. And so now I'm just really that's probably the biggest part of it. I'm just at this stage now too, mentally, where I'm just ready to do what I've always wanted to do. That's probably the biggest thing. So it's making me more impatient. The work doesn't bother me, like, and the idea of quitting is just like, nah, I can't. Nah. You know what I mean? It's just like It's just like it's not in me in a sense. It's just like, so I think really that.
I think for you know, I talk about this always, right? Like, having flexibility is a premium. And if you don't have it in your job, the ability, that might be because of personnel, it might be because of who's your boss, it might be because of the nature of what it is that you do.
Yeah.
But I say to everybody, like, you know, people, I can't stand when people say this to me. Like, people go, "Yo, you're so lucky you're at the gym at 9 a.m. Yeah, okay, I'll acknowledge there's some luck in it, right? But it's been part of my freaking plan because I love shooting baskets, right? Like, I'm like, what job can I do that gives me flexibility that I can go do the things I love to do? And let me write them down on paper. Like, that's why I would tell everybody, write down on paper what it is you love to. I love to freaking rap, right? I'm not talking about like hugging my son. That takes priority over everything, right? But like, we're going to get to that in a second. I like rapping, making songs, recording, right? Performing, right? Those things. I like that, right? I like basketball, right? And I like baseball, in that order, right? I like rapping, basketball, baseball, right? In that order. Now, I don't have the time. I don't have like 9 people down the street. I can go, "Hey, let's go play a game of baseball, guys," right? So I have always thought of ways that I can do those things, right? And it's like, how can I find time to do those things? And for me, when I was working an 8 to 6 job, renting cars, right? Knowing that I went to college and got a degree, and I was like, renting cars is cool because it allows me to take a car for free to go rap more, right? So that has value. And I would work and I'd do my thing and I'd go, wait a minute, this is too many hours though. I can't keep doing 8 to 6 because it's taken too many hours away for me to actually have time to rap and write the way that I want to. And I'm like, something has to give. And then I'm like, let me then sit down and assess what do I really like? I like impact. I like change. I want to make an impression where I live. And I'm like, what could I do? And there's 2 things that came to my mind. I could be in politics or I can be in education, right? It's like, and like, speaking on a stage, talking about what you know is a lot closer to being an educator than it is being a behind the scenes politician. Like, you got to work to get to be a politician that can actually make change. You got to work to be at a place where you can actually do something. Education, I'm like, you can go in that same day and you can inspire youth in your community and you can talk to them about the reality of the industry. So I'm just saying, in my world, I had to be like, yo, what has more time off? What has the ability for me to do what I want? What has the ability for there to be reward and like a feeling of them doing something that's motivating? I'm like, there's no other solution than educator. There was none, right? It was like, I must. And then I was like, I will go hard at this and I will make it so that I will be a professor. And the only reason I said I will make it to be a professor is because I had to, because there's no other. I did all the math. I did all the I started teaching for 6 years at the high school. And I'm like, I didn't account for the fact that freaking teachers don't have a second off. When you teach in high school, you don't have a second off. Now I was like, you got 3 months off in the summer and you get out earlier in the day than your peers. Like you're home at 3:00 if you're teaching high school. I'm like, that's freaking cool. But I didn't account for the fact that you don't have a spare second in the day. So I was like, well, how do you become a professor? Because it seems like they have a lot of time off. And when I found out that they did, and I could make the same impact or greater, I was like, I have to get on that train and do whatever it is. And for me, that meant go get a master's in mathematics and go get a doctorate, right? And it's like, now I'm this age, right? And I have the life that I always wanted to live because I knew that those were the things that I had to do. I didn't need a letter from someone down the street to tell me, yo, this is what you need to do. I had to write that equation down and go, what is the career path that I could do so that I could be flexible? I don't like someone breathing down my neck. I don't like someone telling me what to do. Yo, I have to become a college professor. You know what I mean? It's like, it went whoa on a hill, and I it was like, that's what I must do. And it sounded so stupid I couldn't even tell anyone. This was like, dumbass me, I'm gonna be a professor. Like, how is that possible? I'm gonna change my entire life. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna change everything about myself so that I can become that. And then it became clear to me that I had to make the rapping part, which was taken up all the time, be part of that identity. So I'm like, it's gonna be Professor Lyrical. You know what I'm saying? There's no other solution,
And it worked out, bro.
Yeah, but I'm saying to every single person thinking of this, and this is self-included, you have to think of what is the equation that gives you all those things that you want, and then just go for it. But here's, I think, the problem a lot of people make. They think they're going to do it in one day. They're going to be like, oh, it's going to come to me in a vision, so tomorrow I'm going to quit and I'm going to do X. No way, bro.
No,
like, I was an adjunct for like 8 years with no institution that was interested in hiring me full-time, because I didn't even have a master's yet. You know what I'm saying? It was like, once I had a master's, it was like that opened up some more opportunities. Once I had a doctorate, it opened up a lot more opportunities. So it's like, not everybody's going to do that stuff, but it's like, at some point, I think we all got to go write that stuff down on paper and look at it. And then the equation will emerge. You know what I'm saying? And it'd be like, of what that is. And no matter how stupid it sounds like, that's the answer. You know what I mean?
That's the truth. That's the truth, man. I'm in hot pursuit, bro. I'm in hot pursuit. I need living. One of the biggest things too, man, for me, man, even just like free time for myself, man, is like having 5 children and a wife too.
That's a big piece of the equation.
That's a huge piece of the equation, man. And sometimes I find myself having to remind people that,
because they forget.
So I find myself reminding people like, you must forget that the minimum sacrifices that people can make, to make adjustments in their life. I don't usually have that luxury. I'm not complaining. Right. I'm just saying, like, I find myself having to remind people like, I have 5 children.
Yeah, I got 5 kids.
You know what I'm saying?
They all live at home with me, bro.
Exactly. And I'm like, actively have 5 children. And I'm actively involved in all my children's lives. I actively have to get them time, attention, energy. Even just something simple, bro, like going school shopping, bro. It takes months for me to school shop for all 5 of my children. It's like it's impossible to do it all at one time because I have to find the time to do it, number one. And then, I have to be strategic and just all that kind of stuff. Everybody likes something different. Everybody's a different size and all that kind of stuff. It's like, so every little small
and that controls the parameter of your equation.
Exactly. And it's like every little thing that people think about that should take 10 to 15 minutes takes me 3 times as long. Just the basic stuff.
And then the other piece, we talk about in engineering, we talk about constraints, right? And it's like, you never want to think of your kids as a constraint, but let's face it, a kid you can call it responsibility,
it's a job,
priority, right? You can call it whatever fancy word you want, but like in engineering, we call it constraint. And the constraint is when you've done this equation for 5x, right? When you got 5 kids, right? Is like 5x equals something is going to be a big number at the end. Is going to equal that the job or whatever income is a huge priority of it. So you can't just be like, oh, I want extra time off. Like, you might want extra time off, but the first thing that's going to come as a priority is you're going to 5x is going to have to get fed, So it's like that in that, like for me, I tell people all the time, like with no kids, I'll be like, you're hearing people, this is what I think screws up most rappers. This is what I think. They sit down, you ask them, yo, what's success for you, right? We've talked about this before. Yo, I want a mansion and blah, blah, blah. It's like, bro, take an extra 30 grand a year and add that into your salary. Do you know how successful you feel if you make an extra 30 grand? Like, yo, I'm going to say it on these airwaves. I just did it. Right. I just did it for this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just did that. Like, that hasn't happened since COVID. COVID's gone. I just made an extra 30K, that I don't get from my regular job. Now, do you know how freaking happy I am? Like, it's like, but it ain't luck. You know what I'm saying? It's like, It's part of the business plan. Now, I'm lucky that it happened, but it's been planned so that it can happen, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff I have to do to make it so that that's possible, because I'm shooting for singles, bro. I'm like, and people shooting for home runs and they don't know how to walk. They do not know how to get hit by a pitch. They do not know how to bunt. They don't know how to bunt, bro. They don't get the speed to make it to first. And it's like, you got to assess what you have, It's like, I got like 5 talents in the world at best. And like, I got to work with those 3 really good ones. And they're not traditional, They're not traditional. And it's like, I got to be like, man, I wish I could have a camera follow me sometimes and just be like, do you see the ridiculousness I'm doing just to get that extra 30K? Like, you have no idea, but because I am so in tune with what an extra 30K can do for me, in my life. Right. It's like, what can Brown do for you? Do you know what an extra 30K can do for me? Right. And do you know what it does for my family and my well-being and my, for some people that might be 50, it might be 3K. It might be, the number, everyone's got a different equation. Right. But I'm just saying, like, for the average human being out there, I tell people, I'm like, yo, if you single and you can live in an expensive city, you make 70K, you're good. Right? That's the truth. If you are single and you make 70K, you can live anywhere you want and you're good. Now, you ain't gonna be as good in New York City, LA, Chicago, Boston, San Francisco, right? You're not gonna be as good in those places, but you can still live pretty comfortably, right? Something in your equation might have to go down. Like, you might be taking public transportation and you're still good. Or you might be a roommate and now you're still good and you got that whip, right? And here's the magic. You make 100, right? You don't have to skimp on any of that stuff. If you make 100 grand and you're single,
that extra 30K, you single,
it's the 30K magic. Bro. It's the 30K magic. And so shoot for 100K, bro. It's like, I tell like young people that. And now when you got kids and you get, you might have to be factoring an extra 20K on each one of them heads, right? Or there might be some synergy. Right. There might be some synergy if a couple of them are close to the same age, right? You might have a little synergy over here. A couple of them got a couple things they like together, right? Like, all right, let me throw this out here too. I know we got to get moving, but talk about this. Like, my son has effectively been recruited by me into Star Warsdom. Okay. He now appreciates how amazing Star Wars is. All right. Like, before I came up here, he was watching episode 7. He's watched 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and he's like into everything. He wants to go see John Williams conduct music, right? The themes. Dun, 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 dun. He's like, Daddy, I want to go watch that. Like, I have done my job. Like, my job was to gently nudge him into Star Wars. And here's why. It opens up so many other things, so many other discussions that we can have scientifically, right? And about good and bad and evil and morals and all these kind of things. Right. Right. Yeah. The Force. Quantum. That's why it was on my mind. And we can have these, and it's also bonding time for us because I love it. Right. So I'm like, if my son, this is where I was getting with some carryover. If my son and I can have like an epic kind of movie thing like that we both kind of bond on, we'll have that forever, right? Like it's like that. And it's like some parents will do that with a sport or a hobby that they both do, and it can be quote unquote their thing. That's important, right? And if you can have 2 kids in your family that don't want to kill each other, that actually can, there's some carryover. Like maybe they both play baseball together, right? Maybe they both do math club together, right? Like maybe they both just take the bus together, right? Like something that they can do. Then you are making it easier on yourself. It's like, I once had a
formula.
Yeah, like I had a girlfriend who had kids, right? But two of those kids were twins, and they were two peas in a pod, right? Love them to death. They were two peas in a pod. There was some synergy there, so it wasn't like it was like two kids. It was like one and a half.
One and a half.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's
Right.
the truth,
Like,
bro. That
yeah,
is
and
the
so
truth.
you got to think of all this stuff. I'm just saying, in your equation, you got to be like, yo, does car matter? Does house matter? Do I need roommate? Do I need? And all this stuff becomes second nature when you're a responsible adult who's thought about these kind of things. And I started before you jumped in here, the whole show, just talking about the things you need as an artist, right? Like, do you need a manager? Do you need a business manager? Do you need a lawyer? Do you need an accountant? Right? Do you need all these kind of like things, right? I don't even think I mentioned accountant before, like the fifth person to the team, right? But it was like business manager, personal manager, we want to say accountant, right? Agent, right? And like, do you have, are you lawyered up, right? Like, are you lawyered up? Do you have an agent? Do you have a personal manager? Do you have a business manager? That could be your team, right? You may have some, maybe an A&R if you're with a label, right? Whatever. And if you're not, don't have an A&R, you just have a label head that knows what they're doing, right? Like an LD, right? Like somebody had to have an LD, right? That's your team, right? But you don't necessarily need all those things, right? Some of them can be consolidated. Some of those things you might have a skill with. Some of them you can do on Fiverr, right? We all got to have that equation going so that we can be like, this, I need a little bit of this, I need a little bit of that, and not drive ourselves crazy. Because if we keep driving ourselves crazy and we can't do what it is that we want to do, it's like, what good are we? So I think it's in life, it's in our careers, it's in, but there is a winning formula, and math has taught me anything but, that's the only thing really. It's like, there is always a solution to an equation. And sometimes it's a function and it has many solutions. F of x equals 3x plus 8. There are many x and y coordinates answers to that, right?
Yeah.
Multiple, infinitely many. And we got to tweak one of these little variables. It tweaks what we get out here. But I'm always thinking of the world in that way. It's like a function to me.
That's the truth, bro. That's the absolute truth, man. That's prolific.
I can't help it but think like that, And I'm like, yo, if I can throw 30 grand into the f of x, like, f of x equals mx plus b, and my b is 30K. Like, yes, yo, man, shoot for 30K, man. Whatever your magic number is, man.
Yeah, I think that's my number right now too. But I got some stuff down the pool. There'll be some drastic changes made, man, for me in the next 6 months, man. I am not playing, bro.
I tell, one of them could be
popping.
You might be able to do, like, I'm looking over here. I got my clothes that we sell, like, over there, right? There's clothes that we give away, clothes that we sell, right? Like, some of it might be selling some of them shoes, right? Like, for everybody, right? And it's like, it might be items in your house. There are so many websites for so many things, right? We all got too much junk. And man, if I was turning my camera, you'd be like, man, you got too much junk, right? Like,
that's everybody.
And this stuff. So I was going to say is sometimes it isn't plus 30K. Sometimes it's like minusing obligations that you have in other places. Like, you can save space and sell some stuff. Oh, that adds into the equation quite nicely.
Absolutely.
Right? You got a minus over here. Like, how many subscriptions are you paying for right now for things you don't use?
Don't use. I'm anal about that kind of stuff, though. I can't even front, bro. I've had to be, like you said, like you have to have a certain perspective. Having 5 kids, man, and a wife that had basically been at home the majority of the time,
right,
and without a job because of the children, and just having to have someone here with them, especially when they were younger. And I had to be intentional, and for being in business operations, just thinking about lean and efficiency and operational decisions, man, I've had to always think from a minimalistic perspective. Like, what do I need? What I don't need? What can I live without? And making those adjustments.
You know what LL Cool J said?
It gets harder to do when you got
LL Cool J said, "I can't live without my radio."
And now I'm living without stuff that I love, man. I've been in a creative funk, bro. I hadn't been in the studio. This is the longest span that I have not been to the studio. So I know, bro, that now it's just it's time to give it up.
I've been tweaking stuff, bro. Yeah, you gonna give up studio?
No, I can't go to the studio,
Oh.
bro. I gotta get a job up, bro, because it's affecting.
Yeah.
It's affecting that, and I know, like, that's for me. It's just like, oh no, Like, I'm in a creative funk, bro. I hadn't been to the yo.
Here's what I would do though to
I
get
can't
you back
remember.
in. Crazy, quickest thing. Take a classic instrumental and just write an ill 16 to it and just record it, bro. Like it might be like Mob Deep or something. Just like whip it out and be like, yo, I'm gonna write this classic 16.
First one comes to my mind. I can't think of the name of it now.
I'm like that too. I hear beats all the time and I'm like, oh, it's classic, and I forget what it is. Yeah,
you just.
But anyways, yeah, that's the way, man. You don't even have to mess around. You just be like, put that thing on repeat and be like, drop it. You know what I've been doing recently? When I'm in the middle of not messing with a new project, I tweak old stuff. Like I have a lot of stuff that's not out. I tweak. I'll be like, oh, I gotta mix this a little different. I got a couple of our joints, a couple ProQuo joints, a couple Pro Solo joints that I'm like tweaking a little bit. I'm like, ooh, this right now, ooh, this right. Yeah.
I gotta get to it, bro. I gotta make those adjustments and those changes, man. ASAP, man. It's consuming me. And I don't like the way that
New Orleans is just a flight away. New Orleans is just
away.
a flight away. And July 7th, 8th, 9th, it might be just a flight away. So at least 8th and 9th. At least 8th and 9th.
I'll definitely be there. It's a hop and a skip for me. So
it is. Man.
You're probably closer than I am, but
that is always, that never gets old. I mean, when you really think about it, like it's like people that don't know the joke, it's like, when are you not just a flight away? Right? It's like,
true, bro.
It's like you're always just a flight away, and Fly puts that in very clear perspective for everybody.
Just a fly away, bro.
Now, not all flights are created equal. Not all flights are created equal. I'm telling
you, especially if you're flying from where I live, bro. No flights are equal, bro. You got to take 3 flights to get anywhere.
Yeah, that's tough.
Ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Man.
I'm flying to Columbus, Ohio in like 2 weeks or so. And,
okay, so I remember you telling me about that.
And I was like, I ended up doing it. And I was like, it has to be a direct flight. It has
to be.
That's
spot.
Yeah. I'm like, that's always if it ain't a direct flight, I'm usually not coming. You know what I'm saying? It's like we gonna make it direct. And if it ain't direct, there better be a really efficient one stop.
Does Columbus have an airport? Or you have to fly to like Cleveland or Cincinnati or something like that?
No, it has an airport. Yeah.
Okay, that's dope. Yeah. See, Ohio has got more going on than Mississippi, bro. So it's just like, yeah, I'm in a poor state of the union, bro. It's comfortable though, because it doesn't cost much to live here, bro. Like right. I think, man, you talk about $70,000, bro. $70,000. If you're single and you living in Mississippi, bro, you can stay anywhere you want to stay. When I say anywhere, I mean anywhere.
It was the same way for like Lowell at the time. Like, I mean, Lowell just comparatively to Boston, it was just like everyone was moving up to Lowell to live in the mills. It was like, yeah, of course they are, because you can live for like 50% less, 20 miles away. It might as well be a whole country away. You know what I'm saying? It's like that out here too. Northern Virginia. Yo, the difference between Northern Virginia and Virginia, night and day.
Night and day, huh?
Oh my gosh. Northern Virginia is the same price as DC. Like Alexandria is the same money as DC. It's like Alexandria is pretty expensive, where we are. Not quite as expensive as Boston, but pretty close, and Boston the same way. You go 20 miles in one direction. You go 20 miles out of here, man, houses fall off a cliff for what they cost. But you got to deal with that traffic to be outside the Beltway. Like, we're inside the Beltway. You know what I mean? So for intent, practice, purpose, inside the Beltway is DC. You know what I'm saying? You outside the Beltway, like, I mean, we probably got to go 5 miles to get outside the Beltway. And it's like a big circle right around DC.
Yeah.
Look at that record, right? Like, DC's like the black dot on that red record. That red dot is the Beltway, and the rest all in the black is like Virginia. You know what I'm saying? Except it's lower. It's like if you live here, if you live like right here, it falls off a cliff compared to what it costs to live right here. And
just
we live
like that.
If this is DC, if this is DC, and this is 30 miles away, right? This is like where my father-in-law lives, like down here, right? Everyone lives down there because it's super affordable, right? You live here, super affordable. You live here, nope. You know what I'm saying?
So
and we
like,
live, within
15
here.
miles, that changes almost.
Yeah, and we live here. Like, that's DC. We live here. I'm not touching it. I'm really close to it. You live here, it drops. a little, right?
Bro, y'all literally up the street from DC though. Like,
Oh yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, y'all up the street, bro. I remember when we was going
Here's
riding
the
back around to get to the airport at DC.
Yeah, bro. I'll give you the map, and then I gotta go. This is what it looks like. Let me jump into my LinkedIn page here just to use a page to get to that's already open. So, why didn't I hit Google Maps? Why didn't I just type Google Maps? So, I'll try to expand out of it. So here's DC, right? Up here. I don't know if you can see that good enough.
Yeah.
Let me pull it. So this is Capitol Hill right here. So I'm zooming in. There's the United States Capitol, right? So I used to teach right here. That was where now we up here. Now we up here. I'm pretty close to Maryland, right, where I'm teaching right now. And our main campus is a little bit more over here.
Yeah, but I didn't know it was that far from the main campus when you relocated.
Right. So watch when you zoom out, right? So okay, so this is Alexandria. But watch what it looks like when you zoom out. Okay? So that's where it jumps off. So this is the Beltway here.
Yeah.
Right, that little thing. Now, in a scale of miles, you know you can't really see them over here. Let me X out of here. I still can't because my thing's in the way. Anyways, 10 miles is like a half inch. So this is 10 miles. From the H in Washington to the N in Washington is 10 miles, right? So you can start to see now this part of Alexandria is not the part of Alexandria we live in. We live in the part of Alexandria that's up here. We on 395. So this is like the I'm right like here. So that's where I am. So when you zoom out again, I'm keeping my finger on it again. So I'm there and I drive into work on 395. It's like 5 miles up to DC, right? So that's where I am. So if you live in here, it costs a fortune. You know what I'm saying? You want to live in here. This is old town Alexandria over here, like where George Washington was doing all this thing. There's the George Washington Masonic Temple, right? All that stuff.
Yeah.
Stupid money to live over there. Stupid money. But it's all inside the Beltway. If you live over here, oh man, it's mad cheap. Everyone wants to live over here. But it takes forever getting up 395 because the traffic is ridiculous, or 95 or whatever you want to say. And then that's in Virginia, right? Like watch. Here's the funny part I want to show you, right? Like we're talking Northern Virginia. There's DC. You can't even see. It's hard for you to see like what Virginia really looks like, right? Like Virginia, because of the lines on here. I mean, all this is Virginia till you get to this line. See, this is Virginia. You know, all this you can't. This is where I live. This is Virginia. People talking this Virginia, this Virginia, this Virginia, this Virginia, all the way up to here. Man, this is how far away this is. Like that's like whoa, that's down in North Carolina down here when you cross over. It's so far, bro.
Kakalaki.
Yeah, because when you're in Massachusetts, everything's close. You know what I'm saying? Like Massachusetts here to here. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, this feels far.
Like
it's like an hour and 45 minutes to go from here to here.
Yeah, everything kind of like in that area, in that region, everything's kind of close to each other.
Right. Yeah, it is Boston and New York, right?
Yeah.
Like driving, you can do that like, maybe probably almost 4 hours if you had no traffic. New York to Boston. It's a couple 100 miles, right?
It's amazing the amount of states you cover though in 5 hours.
Yeah. But I'm like, that stretch from Boston to New York is like from here to here. I mean, that's Virginia to Washington. I mean, it's bigger. You know what I'm saying? Like Virginia, people are like, oh, you live in Virginia? That's so close to Norfolk. No, it ain't. I live up here. I live basically in Maryland. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the other thing. Like you see Alexandria right here. Guess what this is? Maryland. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's all Maryland over here. Once you pass that line, Maryland. Here's the line.
That's crazy, man.
This is Maryland. I live here. Well, I actually live over here, but I can get over Maryland in 2 minutes.
Would you say about 30 minutes? You can be in 3 states, right?
Oh man, I can be in Maryland in 15 minutes. I can be in DC in 10 minutes. You know what I'm saying? It just, and then my other campus is up this part of Maryland. Yeah, so.
Yeah, because I remember we was passing through Baltimore, I think it was.
Right, that's up here.
And I'm thinking like, oh yeah, we got a minute before we get to where we're going. Then I looked up and we was in DC. It's like,
no, it's
man,
not.
that's
It's not that
mad
far.
close.
It's like 50 minutes from there driving. So, but yeah, so Washington. So you can imagine how close it is to here. You know.
Yeah.
So, anyways, yeah, that's
what's
it.
up, bro.
That's it.
That's what's up, man. I appreciate that in the multitude of counsel there is safety. I appreciate your words of wisdom too. As always. And
Anytime, man.
I've
Likewise.
been encouraged, man, to make that jump too, man, even more, man. I was already on the cliff, man. I think I got my parachute.
Indeed is your friend, man. Indeed is your friend. When I say Indeed, there's a reason that's a word, because you gotta be on Indeed all the time checking out them.
I do, man. I'm venturing.
Change that slider over to 100K.
Yep.
Say pay minimum 100K, whatever number it is you need, man. It's right there.
Yep. And
last 24 hours.
It hurts. It hurts, bro. The idea hurts. I worked so hard to get to where I am, and to be. I mean, I'm not in any way dissatisfied with.
I would have to think what you do is transferable to so many industries.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so absolutely. I wouldn't stress it too much. I'd be like, hey,
I'm not worried about finding nothing else at all. I'm more on the fence of, do I need to find something else at all, versus just taking a complete different direction. That's my challenge.
Well, I would say, when this is, me, I say the same thing a lot, and I'll be like, just refine things, right? Like, you could be like, okay, let's say you stay in the same general world of what you're doing, right? You just go in with, negotiate from a position of power. It's like, you get the interview. After they want you, in the interview, at some point, if you feel like it's that they want you, like, these are my terms. And it's like, I will not answer the phone after 5. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's the deal. I mean, people, like, it's the same thing at all colleges and universities I've been at too. If those cultures don't exist, it's because somebody from the top is creating it. And it might be you. You might be the person making the problem. Yep. Like, are you sending emails at 5 o'clock on a Saturday? That's on you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that don't happen in other countries, by the way. That's a very American thing.
I'm very notorious about just having limitations. I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I guess my upline. Are
you using your use it or lose it days? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I think my upline, she's pretty. My upline is pretty good too about just not being. When I leave work, I'm usually good.
Yeah.
It's when I'm there.
Yeah.
But I'm there for like half the day.
Yeah.
On top of that too. So that's
you got to be like, guess what? Today I'm out at 5. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like,
absolutely.
And that's the thing with higher ed. Like, nobody's there at 6 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless that's your specific job that you do and you work at that shift or something. But it's like, at 6 o'clock, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? It's like, and if you allow somebody to be emailing you at 6 o'clock on a Sunday, well, then you're creating that culture. And it becomes incumbent upon somebody, usually in HR, to step in and be like, let's rethink this. I mean, I violate that too. I'll be like, oh, I just want to say, and I'm like, what am I doing sending this message on Friday, 8 p.m.? And it's like, what kind of precedent you set, especially if you're sending it to people that are quote unquote under you. It's like, don't be that dude. People can chill, bro. It's like, we're the only country that doesn't use our use it or lose it days. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't take days off, doesn't take time. Life is short, bro.
Life is short, bro. I be burning mine up, though. I ain't gonna even cap. Like, I'd be ready to be like bounce, like, New Orleans for 3 days. Okay, cool. I'll be there. Anything, man. Trips with the fam. I had to do that. I just had been. I guess I'm probably like that because of my family, though. I've always just wanted to make sure that I was available for them.
Right.
And so I did do that when I was much younger, and I regretted it. So I always I became more intentional about, like, I got the days. And that was kind of like one of my purposes. You mentioned that refinement. I kind of got to a point where in my early 20s, I was like, I need to find jobs that had those opportunities where if I needed to take days, I could do that. And that's kind of what led me out of the restaurant industry, because it was like,
that's not in that world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the equation. You know what I'm saying? That's the equation. Yeah. Speaking of which, I need to make that happen now, because I'm looking at the clock and I gotta do that too.
Peace, brother.
All right, bro. Always a pleasure. Hey, Celts.